It made me feel very vulnerable and frightened. It's something you think happens to other people, not to you. So it really knocks your confidence. Even now, quite some time later, it still affects how I feel when I go out in the evening. If I'm walking alone, I'm always looking over my shoulder and get very nervous if there's anyone walking behind me.
The words of a victim of violent crime, spoken by someone else to preserve her anonymity. She was attacked one evening in this Brussels park when a man ran up behind her, sprayed her eyes with pepper spray and snatched her handbag. She's just one of the 75 million people who become victims of crime in the EU each year. The story really began in Paris. On the 18th of May 2011, the European Commission proposed legislation to guarantee basic rights for victims. But the law has its origins in February 1989, when the Court of Justice ruled in favour of a British tourist attacked near a Paris metro station. He had been denied criminal compensation because he was neither French nor a resident. Since then, the EU has been seeking ways to ensure even-handedness, and it starts by overcoming the language barrier.
What is the most important for me? I mean, the right to understand and to be understood. Why? Because everything starts from there. If you go to the police and you don't have a right of a translator, then you can express what is your case, what is your problem, what's happened.
Crime takes many forms, all of them frightening and disturbing. Muggings, robberies, sex assaults and rape, hate crime and even terrorism and people trafficking. If it happens in another member state, victims have found it hard to exercise their rights, but that is going to change. The new legislation demands that victims are treated with respect and dignity by the police, prosecutors and judges. They and their families must be informed about their rights and have access to support services in a language they understand. Victims should have the right to understand, witness and take part in criminal proceedings against the perpetrators. Special care must be exercised with vulnerable victims, such as children, victims of sex attacks and those with disabilities. Victims must feel they're protected during the investigation of crimes they've suffered, and they must enjoy those same rights wherever they happen to be throughout the EU. Something which has not been the case up to now.
La seule alternative qu'ont ces personnes, c'est trouver un avocat dans l'état où se s'est passé le crime ou le délit et prendre contact avec lui. Et tous les frais de consultation de l'avocat sont à charge de la victime, ce qui réduit à l'heure actuelle la possibilité pour ces victimes d'être défendues correctement.
The legislation has also been welcomed by the gay, lesbian, bisexual and transgender community, often the victims of hate crime. For the first time in any international legislation, hate crimes involving sexual orientation are made illegal.
Most hate crimes, most violent crimes committed against LGBTI people go underreported and hence are left in impunity. And the main reason is because of lack of trust in law enforcement, in justice system. And so a legislation like that is already sending a very positive signal.
For MEPs, this new legislation closes existing gaps in victim protection, even allowing victims to appeal against a decision not to prosecute the criminal. And it gives better protection to vulnerable people such as children or victims of gender-based violence.
And also people with, which are homosexuals or LGBTIQ people, etc. So we try to be innovative, and we try to, as a parliament, to impose kind of a very new approach. It is the individual assessment of the needs of the victims.
Despite widespread support among MEPs, member state governments proved reluctant to guarantee equal treatment for victims who are foreign nationals. They tried to delay implementation too, but in the end conceded, agreeing to the Parliament's limit of 3 years. The legislation received overwhelming support at the European Parliament in Strasbourg on the 12th of September 2012. There will always be crime, but if you are one of the unfortunate victims, in future you can at least be sure your rights will be upheld wherever you are in the EU.